There's a metal stairwell from the backyard up to the second floor, and then there's the main entrance staircase opposite to that. I came up the main entrance and heard footsteps pacing back and forth across the far end of hall and thought my husband came up from the metal stairwell to get utensils with me. It was dark and I couldn't see anything. I called out for him and the pacing stopped. No response, and then the pacing footsteps continued. Annoyed, I thought he was messing with me, so I flipped on the lights and all of the utensils from the shelf where I heard the pacing crashed down to the floor, like I spooked something. But there wasn't anything, not even a rat like I thought there might be. 5. One Saturday morning, my husband was on his computer in another room. I'm in the apartment playing with a Tamagotchi app on my iPad when I heard the stereo sitting in front of me click on and a girl's voice started talking from it. I thought he controlled the stereo from his computer, so I ignored it because he often puts on music to work out before class started. He teaches the morning class. I do remember thinking, what kind of weird-ass indie music is he listening to anyway, because the voice just said, "Hi, my name is." I thought I heard Katie, but I'm not 100% sure because I wasn't paying attention. I have never known a Katie in my life. I am _years old. I'm from _ etc. I didn't catch the specifics because I wasn't really listening, but that went on for about 2 or 3 minutes until it suddenly went, "Something's hurting me." And when I caught that, I looked up and squinted at the stereo, like what? Something's killing me. Something killed me. At this point the hair is standing on the back of my neck and I'm getting up from the couch to take a closer look. Please, someone tell my parents, tell the teachers, tell the corrections officer. At the word corrections officer I just bolt into the other room and start yelling at my husband and cursing him out because I was certain he was playing a trick on me. Told him we don't fucking play jokes about dead people. And he's of course looking at me like WTF? When he finally calms me down long enough to get what I heard out of me and what I was accusing him of, he told me it was impossible and led me to the stereo. It's not plugged in. I thought maybe the stereo picked up the signals from an ebook or something. So after that last fiasco, I went to ask our live-in student who lived with his GF in the basement apartment of the building if anything weird's happened. They shot each other an alarmed look and told me this. His GF was sleeping one night when he was working overnight and she heard footsteps come down the stairs and their door open and then close. All of a sudden a bright flashlight shines in her face and she can just make out the silhouette of who she thought was her BF because he's tall, and she can see the dirty jeans he's wearing. She's annoyed thinking he's messing with her, so she's swatting at him and telling him to stop. Finally she gets so pissed off she turns on their lamp and there's no one there. They sometimes hear footsteps on the first floor when there's no one in the building. They had a pet mouse at the time and whenever that happened it would start doing backflips in its tank. However, when class is going on and there are people in the building, the mouse didn't care and just went about its mousy business. They were play wrestling one day when suddenly, their African grey parrot ruffled its feathers and in a really alarmed voice asked, "Who's there? Who's there?" They thought it was funny at first, so our student looked at the bird and pointed to the door and said, "You mean over here?" and ran towards the door to open it. As he did that, all the books that were lining the shelf on the way to the door fell over in front of him and the lights started flickering. The bird and the mouse both got spooked and were throwing themselves against their cages. Our second live-in student after the first one got married to his GF, got their own home, had a baby, several times could just not find his phone when he woke up in the morning when he had placed it next to his bed the night before. He would search his room high and low and then he'd find it perfectly placed right outside his locked bedroom door on the floor. I thought he might have been sleepwalking, but his GF says she'd realize it if he did since she's a very light sleeper. So don't know what that's about. Nothing notable has happened since then, but we have also not had anyone stay there overnight in years. Edited to add, for all the similar questions. I only looked into it very slightly because again, I am more inclined to believe it's just the stereo picked up an ebook someone was listening to. However, for all you ghost hunters out there, feel free to look it up in the About Me page of my food blog. which is in my profile. There's a link to the school which includes the address. Have fun, let me know if you find anything exceptionally creepy. Since it was such an old building and we did most of the work ourselves, as in there was no functional bathrooms or anything, and I can now lay tile like a pro, it could have been hallucinogenic mold that affected everyone. I had, some years prior to this, had a week of hallucinating people who weren't there and spiders, which had increasingly insane colors, but they were also tactile hallucinations because I felt them on my hand as well. I otherwise have no issues, and those symptoms never occurred again after that bizarre week. So it could be we all had some hallucinations. When I was younger, I used to take naps upstairs, but by the time I was 8 years old I absolutely refused to go upstairs. The upstairs had 2 large closets, attics. They ran from one side of the upstairs all the way to the other side on both sides. It was essentially a crawl space that was maybe 30 feet long. It started one day when a friend and I went crawling from one side to the other with flashlights like kids normally do. Then I saw a girl, sitting there, in the corner acting like she wanted to play with us. I know a lot of people say when they see a ghost they aren't scared. Just interested. Nope, I was beyond terrified. This girl looked normal, had blonde hair, a nice dress, and seemed friendly. I stayed silent, kept crawling behind my friend and got out of the closet. Told him what I saw in there. He said he didn't see it, but felt like he didn't want to go back in. Then my parents would occasionally send me upstairs to get something, and when I would get up there I would see the doors swing open, as if they were trying to get me to come inside. I would lose toys and wouldn't be able to find them anywhere. Suddenly, my parents would be fishing out Christmas presents out of the attic and we would find some of my toys in there. I remember being 8 years old. My parents are asleep still in the morning and I leashed up my dog to go take on the monster in the attic. My dog, usually up for anything, refused to go off the top step into the attic. My parents never believed me with all the weird things that happened in that house. I would get blamed for things that happened all over the house. Leaving lights on, toys all over, things I knew I didn't do. Well, anyway, we move out of there when I am 10. Not a week passes before the new owners call us up and ask if the house is haunted. Their daughter sleeps upstairs. She says that she has been playing with a blonde-haired girl at night. My parents laughed at how crazy these new homeowners must be. To make an already long story short, the girl started appearing in other parts of the house for them. They kept in contact with us. They would look over while watching TV and see the girl sitting on their daughter's lap, etc. They looked up on the computer the past owners of the house, found an old dressmaker that lived there, and yep, a picture of the little girl wearing one of the ladies' dresses. The family that moved in there were absolutely torn apart by the events. Got divorced, Dad stayed living in the house and ended up taking his own life in that house. I live in a house built in the 1800s. It's survived the 2 world wars and it's seen some shit, I imagine. One of the previous owners had 2 sons, who both committed suicide. A lot of strange stuff happens. The animals, dog and parrots, will wake up from their naps and follow something with their heads just as they would follow me if I walk around. Also, before I switched rooms in the house, my brother had a room and he refused to sleep there as he would hear voices. He slept with my parents, he was a child, until the day he got my old room, and since then has slept in that room without problems. There's also a whole floor we don't use and I sleep in the attic, and I pass through that floor to get to my attic. Weird explanation, but it's a weird house, and I have a motion activated light there that goes on as I'm walking the stairs to that unused floor. It would also switch on in the middle of the night while nobody is walking under the motion detector. Also, there's cold spots. In 2012, my stepfather overdosed on heroin and dropped dead in the hallway in his condo apartment. My mum had to move out shortly after since they were already behind on mortgage bills. A few months later, my lease went up and I was barely making ends meet and couldn't find a new roommate. My mum offered me the key to the condo apartment to squat for a few months until I saved up enough for my own apartment. I took the offer and moved into the condo apartment. After a month or so, I was asleep in the living room and I had this dream of him standing in the hallway facing the living room. He was looking at me and smiling/laughing. Even made a stupid joke and everything. It wasn't disturbing at all, just bittersweet. Then I suddenly woke when I felt some pressure stroking down my head and back. There was nothing around me and it tripped me the hell out. As a skeptical person that doesn't believe in the paranormal, it has to be some kind of sensory hallucination. It was still nice to see him in my dream once again though. Made me tear up typing this. R.I.P. Darren. Mildly interesting fact, he dropped dead on July 13th in 2012. On a Friday the 13th. I lived in one when I was a teen, along with my parents. Several instances come to mind. We were remodeling an old farmhouse and had been there a couple of months before witnessing anything. One day I was underneath my truck, which was supported by only a jack. Stupid, I know, I was in the middle of working on it, with no good reason to get out at that moment. Suddenly the overwhelming urge to get out from underneath overwhelmed me. No sooner than I got out, the truck fell to the ground, the jack had slipped. Freaked Dad out, he thought I was under it. When Mom got home, we mentioned it, and she started crying, sobbing pretty hard. It turns out the previous owner died in the driveway, under a vehicle, in that spot. I would often see moving shadows, and strangely hear music from the upstairs area. The windows of the old house were corked shut, and blackbirds would often get caught between the panes. We ended up replacing all the windows but we had to break 3 inside panes to get them out. One of the more disturbing things happened when my mother was cooking breakfast. She turned away to get something out of the cabinet and when she turned back around, all the forks set out were bent straight up. My father-in-law died before my son was born, so he never met him. When we moved into our new home, my son would often be laughing in the middle of the night by himself. No biggie, kids will play with anything. One day, we were finally putting pictures up in the house and once I put up the picture of my father-in-law, he said, "Oh mommy, why do you have a picture of the man that comes and play with me at night?" He had never ever seen a picture of my father-in-law before. Not exactly haunted per se, but I experienced a bit of activity in my dad's house. 1. There was a time where we had a bunk bed in the first room. I slept on top and my dad slept on the bottom. One night, I had a dream where I woke up and saw a bunch of people that looked like my dad in the hallway. I asked them who they were, and they only said we are not from the holy. Freaked me the fuck out. 2. Eventually, we dismantled the bunk bed and divided it into 2 beds and moved them to the last bedroom. I would also sleep with my dad. Whenever he turned off the lights, I would feel a group of people staring at me in the darkness. It wasn't a benevolent stare either. It would always make me scared. I haven't liked sleeping alone for a while now, especially after this. 3. To give some insight for this next one, my dad's house is divided like this. Garage, basically the front door. Kitchen, dining room, living room, they were all together in the same spot. Hallway, it had a gate that closed off the previously mentioned room. 1 ST bedroom. Bathroom. 2 ND bedroom. 3 RD bedroom. Now that I've explained the structure, this is what happened. I was brushing my teeth early in the morning because me, my dad and my grandpa had to go somewhere. My dad was changing in the first bedroom, my grandpa was changing in the second bedroom, and my sister and grandma were sleeping in the third bedroom. The gate to the living room was closed. As I am brushing my teeth, a cup starts coming through the hallway and it stops in front of the door and then it gets hurled at me. I managed to dodge it, but I'm still a bit shocked. When I check, everyone was still in their rooms, and the gate was still closed. 4. This one happened in the kitchen, dining, living room. It's 10 p.m., my grandpa and grandma were doing Bible study. Me and my sister were watching TV, and my dad was doing something, don't remember. Suddenly, a bright flash comes from the center of the room. No one was outside, no one had a camera or phone, the TV didn't have any image similar to it. Everything was normal until then. The only thing my dad could think of was kneeling and praying. 5. Not my experience, but my dad's cousins. Sometime after my dad left because of Hurricane Maria, his cousin and her mom went into the house to do some stuff. I think it was to clean the house. Anyway, she's in the garage and she feels a strong, negative presence. Like it doesn't want her there. She tells it she's not up for this and finishes and leaves. After that, she always felt something looking at her from Dad's house. 6. Also Dad's cousin's experience. At night, she woke up and was experiencing sleep paralysis. When she looked, there was this malevolent presence, like a shadowy whirlpool, next to her bed. It was slowly pulling the covers up to her face, probably to suffocate her just a bit. She kept trying to say something but couldn't. When she finally got her strength back, she yelled "Te reprendo en el nombre de Dios." Something amongst the lines of "May the Lord rebuke you." The presence dissipated and went back to the house. A lady who had 2 husbands die on her in the same house. That's the house my dad decides to buy. The first one hung himself from the rafters in the garage and the second one fell ill and died in his bed in the basement. I lived in the basement room and often just felt like I was being watched all the time. The bedroom in the basement has a secret storage room behind a bookshelf with a locking latch. I would always wake up to find the door wide open. It happened so often that I would wake up cold and routinely go shut and lock the latch of the door in the middle of the night. For the longest time I thought it was my dad or stepbrothers messing with me, but it wasn't. My stepbrother now occupies that room and he says it still happens to him and that he's even seen it open on its own. There are no events or anything, so I've ruled out wind. Also in the garage, I always see light coming from under the door through the crack only to open the door to pitch black. I've heard sounds coming from the garage only to find saw blades clanging together and slightly rotating in their place on the whole storage wall. Didn't think anything of it at first, but when you find shit moving on more than one occasion, it makes you look over your shoulder at the rafters and wonder. This might get a little buried, but I'll share anyway. So 2 weeks before we moved, my dad and I toured our house and I noticed this guy was painting the water heater, which I thought was weird AF, but I was like 10, so whatever. Anyway, we moved in on a Wednesday and my parents let me stay home from school until the following Monday and preoccupied me with coloring books and a new dollhouse. In my brand new crayons pack, there literally wasn't a blue crayon, like it was a 64 pack, but there were only 63 crayons in it. One day I went downstairs into the basement and my blue crayon was next to the hot water heater and scribbled on there it said "Hi Fit Nurse 6 Kevin." I was so confused. I started school and my new classmates were like, "Do you live in Kevin's house? Your house is gonna be haunted." It turned out that Kevin was a little 8-year-old boy that lived in our house prior to us and he got hit by a car in the front yard. He would write notes if you left out a pen and paper, open and close doors, adjust the thermostat, the kind where you had to turn a knob, and always turn on Christmas music when it was that time of year. Smile, we had a swing set in the backyard and even on the hottest, calmest days of summer, only the left swing would be moving back and forth. We had this dumb cat that I would lock in my bedroom at night, and every morning, my parents would open the door and let him out, then close it back. One night I woke up and the cat was meowing at the door and it woke me up, but the door opened and the cat hissed and ran out really fast. I asked my mom the next morning why they didn't close my door and they said they didn't open it. The last story is when I was very upset and nearly suicidal one year during Christmas break. The police just randomly showed up at my house. The policeman said he was patrolling our neighborhood and felt like something was wrong at our house. I'm absolutely certain Kevin had something to do with it. So this is currently happening in the house I'm living in NJ. A week or so ago at 3 AM I was just getting up to turn the heating off and potter around after falling asleep on the sofa. I was yawning and rubbing my eyes a lot and was just about to get up to go to bed when I realized this noise getting louder and louder, like you don't realize it's happening until it's super loud. I suddenly realize and turn my head around to see the kettle boiling by itself. You have to push a button down and it glows blue, which was highlighting the shadow of the button that had definitely been pressed. I freak out thinking I've lost time and it was me, but I've forgotten soil rationalize, and before I can stop myself the words "but I don't want tea or coffee" come out of my mouth, and at which point the kettle clicks off. Like I literally heard the switch. It wasn't at the end of the boil either. I'm English and so used to 220 watt outlets which do everything twice as fast, so I know it was in the middle of the boil. Also, as soon as I said that, I felt guilty, like I shouldn't have been scared. Like it was a friendly offer. 2 days later I was with a friend at the dining room table, both of us at least 5 foot and round the corner from the kettle. Nobody else in the house, when it starts boiling again. My friend rushes over and points out the button has been pushed. So much relief came over me that I wasn't insane, and I explained to my friend that this happened to me at night. A few nights ago I was lying in bed and could hear a conversation, at 4 a.m., no one around, neighbors are 20 feet away either side. Then the kettle starts boiling. I'm pissed, so I literally say out loud, "Please stop boiling the kettle, we have people asleep upstairs," and it clicked off again. This could just be a faulty kettle and coincidence. I don't believe in ghosts whatsoever and have never seen nor felt anything before. It's just freaky, but it's not scary. Only my first instinct. I feel as though someone is trying to take care of me, like when you were sick off school and lying in bed and your mum or dad would take care of you and bring you soup and stuff. Very, very